This podcast serves Middle Tennessee every weekday morning, and it's made possible by member support. Learn how you can make a difference at WPLN.org/support.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's March 3rd, 2026. And in Tennessee, this is officially considered National Guard Day. It's one of those state holidays with a lowercase h. Nobody gets the day off, not state workers, not even the ones who work directly with the Guard itself. But since 2012, state code has designated this as a special day. And it's possible that either the governor or the state's military department will issue some sort of proclamation or press release about the occasion. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. This year's National Guard Day comes after a string of deployments and activations. And at this point, about a month ago, Guard members were still doing a lot to help with recovery from Winter Storm Fern. They came through my neighborhood, clearing tree debris, and even figured out that the mysterious stream of water running down my driveway came from a burst pipe in the empty house next door. They played a part in flood and wildfire responses in other parts of the state in the past year. Some were sent to the Middle East, some to the nation's border with Mexico. And in a decision that stirred up a lot of controversy, some members of the Tennessee National Guard were deployed to West Tennessee as part of the federal government's Memphis Safe Task Force. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. When the federal law enforcement surge in Memphis was first announced, it really did seem as though the National Guard was going to be the major element. I certainly talked about it on this podcast. So did just about every other news outlet in the state, plus the bigger national discussion about deployments in Memphis and a handful of other cities across the country. Lawsuits were filed. There was much discussion of what powers the Tennessee Constitution gives the governor to deploy the Guard. And to some extent, that's still a simmering issue. But what we've seen play out as the months have gone by is that the Memphis surge actually seems to rely much more on a different arm of the state. What data folks have been able to analyze indicates the Tennessee Highway Patrol is actually a much more active presence than the Guard in the task force effort. In retrospect, of course the Highway Patrol is a major player. I mean, remember that weekend flurry of traffic stops and immigration detentions that happened in Nashville back in May? That was the Highway Patrol partnering with ICE. Soon afterwards, the state made it very clear that the Highway Patrol would operate as a more active, ongoing partner with federal immigration enforcement. And that kind of crackdown is at the heart of what the feds are trying to do with the law enforcement effort in Memphis. Still, with all the talk about the Guard as the task force was being organized and initially deployed, it seemed like the major concentration of state troopers came as a surprise. Within days of the surge's start, reports started coming out of West Tennessee about incredible numbers of traffic stops by the THP. The number of arrests and citations quickly began to swamp the local courts in more cases than they could handle. By November, the state's Department of Safety and Homeland Security was making a budget request for the money to hire more troopers because they'd moved so many to Memphis that the Highway Patrol was understaffed in other parts of the state. Now, new analysis of data about the traffic stops those troopers are conducting in Memphis is showing a disturbing trend. The Institute for Public Service Reporting finds that the Memphis Safe Task Force has brought a dramatic increase in potentially unsafe vehicle pursuits to the city. And the majority of those risky car chases, nearly 90% of them, involve the Tennessee Highway Patrol. Now, not all car chases are risky or dangerous. Sometimes they're truly the only way to get a dangerous driver under control to otherwise bring a problem to an end. They are part of the law enforcement toolbox for a reason. But some can be quite dangerous. On average, about 40% of all chases nationwide end in a crash. Other motorists and pedestrians are put at risk. All in all, a chase can make for a bigger problem than whatever started the chase in the first place. And that's why most law enforcement agencies have policies clarifying when officers should give chase and when they need to find some other way of solving the problem. And the analysis suggests the THP's policies are probably on the more lenient side. The data shows that chases in Memphis since the task force began have often been at speeds of more than 100 miles per hour on all kinds of roadways, sometimes running red lights or racing through residential neighborhoods. Right in line with what the national averages would predict, more than 40% of those chases have indeed resulted in wrecks. And even after a crash, things can then transition to a swarm of armed officers, guns out, chasing someone on foot. And these events sound like scenes from movies. I think it's safe to say it's a lot less fun and exciting when all of this is happening outside your house. But, okay, how are these chases starting? Well, in the movies, a big chase comes after someone robs a bank or murders a person in broad daylight, or maybe as the result of a big drug bust. The data from Memphis shows a number of circumstances that started out with minor traffic infractions. Someone driving without a seatbelt. A trooper noticed a car had a busted headlight. Things like that. The driver gets scared for some reason or other and hits the gas instead of pulling over. Now, let's be clear. A chase doesn't happen without that driver deciding to run rather than pull over. But the data from the THP stops in Memphis does also show that there can be another way to handle things. For example, one trooper started to chase after a car with a missing back bumper, but then decided to back down after it became difficult to follow the vehicle. The trooper used the tag number to figure out where the driver lived, went to that location, and arrested the person there on charges of reckless driving. In another case, troopers called in an aviation unit to follow the vehicle from overhead, rather than putting other folks on the ground at risk by continuing the car chase. But the bottom line seems to be that a lot of folks in Memphis right now, for the THP, are taking a rather aggressive approach. And that raises questions about what impact the so-called safety task force is having on the actual safety of people who live in that community. In just a few minutes, how much of an environmental review is the Boring Company's Nashville tunnel really getting? That's coming up after the newscast.
You know how important WPLN News has been to you and your family, and you have seen how high-quality local journalism is necessary to a thriving community. You can ensure that this service stays strong and stays available to all of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. Join the Producers Circle with your gift of $100 or more each month and make the bold statement that you support the mission of a more informed and engaged community. Start your philanthropic journey with Nashville Public Radio today at WPLN.org.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Aid money continues to flow to folks affected by the late January ice storm that closed schools and knocked out power to thousands in Middle Tennessee. United Way of Greater Nashville says people need help paying rent and electric bills and with getting food. To date, nearly $500,000 in financial assistance has been distributed to around 600 families. Hundreds of thousands of additional dollars have been dispersed to various local organizations. Folks needing help can call 211 Monday through Thursday. Nashville's main library could reopen at the end of March, nearly 9 months after a fire broke out in the downtown library's parking garage. A final inspection must be completed. Customers will be able to hold books and materials to pick up on opening day. Much of the building was relatively unaffected by the fire and smoke. Most of the damage occurred in the conference center area on the first floor. 90% of the books in the main library were okay. Customers say the library means more to the community than just a place to check out books. They see it as a hub for public meetings, web access, and affordable parking. There's no timeline for the garage to open. The current plan is to reopen the lower garage levels while repairs to the upper levels continue. Meanwhile, Nashville's Parthenon will be closed for several months as Metro Parks works to replace the building's heating and air conditioning systems. You can still visit outside the Parthenon, including taking the audio tours. Work has also been underway in the surrounding Centennial Park to add 2 new entrances at the rear of the park, a new event center, and to turn an older building into a cafe. Some of that work has been on the park's to-do list for more than a decade. The Parthenon is expected to reopen in late June. Well, Tennessee is not reducing its world language requirements for high schoolers, at least for now. Teens are generally required to take 2 credits of a language other than English to earn a Tennessee diploma. The chair of the state's Board of Education brought a proposal that sought to lower it to 1 credit. Robert Eby argued that would allow students more space in their schedules for classes suited to their goals, like career and technical education courses. But advocates for world languages touted the benefits of picking up another language. The Nashville Banner Report students at a board meeting on Friday shared how classes allowed them to communicate with older relatives in their mother tongue, travel the world on scholarships, and read classic literature in its original language. The board voted to table the proposal reducing language requirements. Instead, the board has asked staff to revise and standardize a waiver which allows students to seek exemption on an individual basis. Well, after more than a decade of growth for bourbon and spirit makers, A new report from the Kentucky Distillers Association suggests that changing trade policies and consumer habits could hinder one of the region's signature industries. Kentucky has the nation's largest share of distilling employees, and Tennessee ranks number 2. Kentucky's whiskey exports were down 28% in the first half of last year compared to June 2024. Association President Eric Gregory says younger people are not buying as much alcohol and says there's more competition in the leisure market for their dollars, including from sports gambling and legalized cannabis.
A lot of things are kind of hitting at once that are having some effects on sales and exports that we've really never seen before. But the good news from this report is the foundation for Kentucky bourbon is strong.
The distillers that make Kentucky bourbon and other spirits contributed a record $10.6 billion in annual economic impact to the Commonwealth in 2024. Well, there's a little-known role in metro government, Davidson County historian. And as WPLN Cynthia Abrams reports, we have a new one.
Tennessee State University professor Dr. LaRotha Williams, Jr. isn't from Nashville originally, but he's lived here for many years and thinks that outsider perspective can actually be important.
I was a bit reluctant because I was like, I'm not even from Nashville. But then I thought about it. Most of the folks that I see every day ain't from Nashville either.
As the county historian, he says his goal is to amplify marginalized voices, like Nashville's Latino and Muslim communities. And he's trying to find creative ways to preserve stories that were, as a community, at risk of losing.
You're saying if you have no knowledge of the past, then something is fundamentally wrong with you. The same is true for people, communities, neighborhoods, cities, and states. If we don't have a memory of past events, then there's something fundamentally wrong with us. We are not a properly functioning entity.
Williams will hold the role for 5 years. Cynthia Abrams, WPLN News.
An East Tennessee man was awarded the Medal of Honor this week for an act of courage, saving the lives of nearly 200 American soldiers in World War II. U.S. Army Master Sergeant Roddy Edmonds was a prisoner of war when he refused to follow orders to let German forces segregate Jewish American prisoners. Edmonds died in 1985 and received the military's highest medal posthumously. About 3,500 soldiers have earned the Medal of Honor since the 1800s. Only a dozen are still living. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. The Boring Company has officially begun drilling a tunnel in Nashville. City officials and residents remain unclear about what that means for Nashville's underground environment, along with the company's plans for extreme weather. WPLN's Caroline Eggers reports on lingering questions about transparency and safety.
Nashville Council member Clay Capp is standing in a parking lot. It's cloudy and windy, and traffic grumbles nearby. In one corner of this lot, a green fence shields a construction site from public view, with scaffolding and drilling machines poking out above. It's the Boring Company's downtown work site. Though, as Cap points out, it's not exactly downtown, since it lies a bit outside of the neighborhood's dense hubs of hotels and apartments.
One of the biggest tells about the whole thing is that they're not proposing a tunnel system based on where they think it will be most helpful to the needs of transportation in Nashville.
He says this calls into question the public benefit of a tunnel that will connect to the airport. Because unless people are close enough to roll their suitcases to it, they'll have to take additional transit.
They're not really concerned with addressing traffic. They want to test out their tunnel machine in a place where they think the state government will let them.
In this case, a state-owned parking lot that connects to a state-owned highway. But usefulness aside, Cap is concerned that Nashville will be a guinea pig, since the city's environment is different from that of Las Vegas, where Boring built its first tunnel. Cap says he still has a lot of questions. He tried to ask them recently during a special called meeting with Nashville's Metro Council. Some were answered by Boring's general counsel, Steve Schwarzbach.
Does the Boring Company acknowledge that in Tennessee there is strict liability for anyone who causes erosion or subsidence or a sinkhole on a neighboring property?
Subject to applicable law.
Have you done a traffic study to analyze those impacts? I take that as a no. Will you conduct such a study and release the results publicly?
If this is required under applicable law.
At times, the meeting got heated. like when Cap asked about the Boring Company's self-funded environmental review. He says the review references data from local contractors, but doesn't provide it.
That kind of disclosure is customary in environmental impact statements. Will you share those records with the Metro government and the public?
We're not making any commitments right now. Councilmember Cap, please submit that via written, and we will respond that way.
So, about this review. The Boring Company paid a consultant, Davie Resource Group, to assess the potential environmental impacts of its project. In a 150-page document, less than 10 pages covered water, geology, and safety. The geology section references studies published between 1958 and 1990. It barely acknowledges extreme weather risk, referencing heavy rainfall once before quickly dismissing the concern. This came up during the recent council meeting. Boring Company Vice President David Buss was asked how extreme weather affects tunneling.
The short answer is it is generally unaffected by surface conditions.
This is misleading. While underground systems don't have direct atmospheric exposure, they are affected by changes in soil and groundwater levels, often from drought and flooding. Scientists wrote in the journal Geotechnical Research last year that climate change poses a challenge for underground transport, during construction and in the long term. One word that is not mentioned in this environmental report is sinkholes. And per U.S. Geological Survey research, Nashville's limestone terrain is considered a sinkhole hotspot. Trey Bussey, an attorney with the Southern Environmental Law Center, says Boring has not addressed key environmental questions about sinkholes or groundwater risk.
The public deserves to know that this company is aware of the serious, unique risk of tunneling through this area and that it's ready for them.
Bussey says the report glosses over these by citing geological investigations.
But the company has not disclosed those investigations.
The report funded by Boring isn't just a nice gesture. It's affecting state regulations. The Tennessee Department of Transportation recently approved a permit for Boring and chose a, quote, categorical exclusion for an environmental review. That means they felt like the company met enough criteria to bypass a comprehensive review. And the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation told WPLN it decided not to require a permit after reading Boring's report. Between this report and the recent public comments by Boring executives, Bussey suggested that
they're just saying, trust us.
While Nashville leaders and residents keep saying,
we don't trust you, show us your work.
As construction ramps up, it might not be long before some answers become clear. Caroline Eggers, WPLN News.
Thanks for listening to the Nash Villager podcast. We take this look at Nashville news every weekday. If you like it, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and tell a friend or give us a mention on your socials. It really helps get the word out. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can become a member at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.